Okay, is it working? Awesome. Hello, everyone. As you can see by the main slide here, this is going to be about my history tourism essay. This is the multimedia component about everything. And now I've actually never made something like this before. I never made a video describing anything to somebody else. So it's actually a first for me. So I just kind of slapped together a little PowerPoint to kind of organize my thoughts a little better. So don't judge me too harshly. I am very new to this. And anyway, I did try to use like a screen recording software for my computer, but I couldn't really figure it out and it just wasn't working. So I decided to go back to basics and just use my smartphone, hello, duh, to record my computer screen. And I hope it's picking up my voice well. Now, I decided to do history tourism. Essentially, I'm going to be describing the evolution of tourism as kind of like a whole industry and even an idea in like human consciousness. I picked history tourism because I thought it was really interesting. Like we take so many things for granted today, and like tourism is one of them. I mean, it's just like you go on Facebook or you go on Instagram and you just see somebody post their pictures about, I don't know, their trip to like Italy or Spain or something, and you just take it for granted. But literally traveling an entire ocean to go just to see somewhere completely for leisure and fun was such an alien concept to humans, not even 500 years ago. Now, the reason why it was an alien concept is that, well, as it says, is the old world kind of sucked. We're talking about any time before the 18th, 19th century. It really did suck. It was not a good time for anyone. I mean, there was like rampant diseases going on. There was so much social injustice. There was just human brutality in its purest form. It was not a good time. And especially for something that was like tourism, which is kind of a leisure activity that people undergo, it wasn't good. When you were born as a farmer or just like a general laborer, like somebody in the common class, you basically had no say over your life or any kind of, I guess, like material pursuit, like going out to go see the world or something. Like that just wasn't possible. I mean, you had to have connections to even like leave your home country. You had to like be somebody important. You had to be like up there in the church, like the Catholic Church at the time. You had to be like a wealthy noble, just like related to royalty, to even go someplace else. For like 95% of humanity, you were basically just stuck where you were born, like in the general 50-mile radius, and you were just going to labor on that piece of property you were born on for your lord, for your king, for your owner, if you were a slave, basically that kind of deal, forever. It wasn't good. It sucked, especially for tourism. Didn't even exist as an idea. Now, if you were to flash forward sort of a bit to the 1500s to like the 1700s, that kind of time period, think about the deep Middle Ages, where you had the Renaissance happening, where there was like the merchant republics in Florence, Italy, and the kings and queens, I guess, of like Britain, France, and whatever. They were they experienced tourism actually, like they experienced. I guess my definition of tourism is leisure travel, and they did have that back then. And I want to explain, I guess, travel in general around this time. because like in the classical era, like Romans and Greeks and stuff, they didn't really have an idea of it. Like I said, they really just kind of lived around where they died. I mean, if they were a soldier, they had to like march across different countries and stuff, but that was usually like extremely dangerous, and not even like a quarter of them lived to like tell a tale about it. But flash forward to the Middle Ages, and basically after the fall of the Roman Empire, they did have roads. You see my mouse pointer here, hopefully. They did have roads like this, and if you were to go anywhere, these were basically your best bet, like these main arterial highways of the old world, these old Roman highways. Now, after the Roman Empire collapsed, however, these weren't really maintained very well. They were like talking about just deep holes. You know, like we talk about, you know, pits and our asphalt nice roads and stuff like it's a big deal. But back then, I mean, we're talking about like puddles waist deep. Like if you fell into one, you could be like neck high in muck. And it was just disgusting. Like if you wanted to travel anywhere, like let's say the main reasons for travel around this time were like if you were a soldier or a conscript, you had to go march for months out of your life, just marching on these roads to go somewhere and to go like fight and kill people or just, I guess, be intimidating. And they weren't even, plenty of bumps, plenty of uncomfiness. It was not a good time. It was not like the smooth kind of asphalts we have now. But let's say you're not part of like a kind of standing army and you're just a traveler. Like you want to go from village to village to go like visit some distant family that you might send letters to, or maybe you're on like a pilgrimage to a certain monastery in your area. These were the main roads you had to travel across. And it was dangerous. It was a bad time. It's not like there's a McDonald's over here in the bushes where you can go get a meal from. I mean, you had to travel and you had to carry a lot of rations on you. And the rations were just, imagine like rock solid bread that you kind of had a campfire and boil it, like boiled bread and whatever you could find. It was disgusting. A lot of people were nutrient deficient from doing this. It was, the travel rations were terrible. Like if you had a good meal, even just for one day, it was considered a great day that you could find something to even eat. Like you catch a rabbit and have some salt or something to use on it. But outside of like the general accompanist, there was bandits. Like banditry was a real profession back then. Like let's say conscripts in an army were to be trained to fight a different country's army. Well, after the battle was done and over with, it's not, I mean, having an army at this time was extremely expensive. Like, you had to constantly upkeep them, and they wouldn't do any work. They would just kind of just train martial arts and bows and swords and stuff. And you can imagine how heavily that affects taxes, right? To like sustain like 1,000, 10,000 fighting men. So many of them were kind of laid off after the main battle. And all they knew, you know, they didn't even know how to farm or anything. Like these people were taken when they were like 15 or 14. So they were basically men who only knew how to fight. And that's what they did. The only thing they knew how to do was basically martial arts stuff and kind of use their weapon skills and bows. And you can see this guy's like a cool axe in the background. And they would use that to go and mug people, essentially. Like most of the travelers at this time weren't actually like the common farmers. They would stick around their farms and a lot of land till they died. The farmers, I mean, people who traveled were like wealthy noblemen and no, I see that too much. Wealthy noblemen and merchants and I guess generals and stuff, like people who could actually afford to travel. Because it took weeks, man. It took like weeks and months to even travel like 300 miles. It was a whole ordeal. It was not as simple as just driving in your car and 3 hours later you're at your location. It was like a whole planned ordeal. that took weeks to do. And they would go and they would just basically mug them. They would mug these rich people who wanted to travel, who could only travel, only people that could travel, and they would steal all their stuff and they would go sell it or get drunk off of it or whatever they did. It was pretty dangerous. Now, I'm really lagging on this slide, so let's go to the right here. Now, where would you, like if you were to travel in a place without Super 8 or any hotels and motels, where would you stay at? That is kind of what the monasteries at this time were. Like, we're talking about a structure, like a whole kind of super church compound deal with like 100 plus men devoted to Jesus or whatever religion you could think of. And they would kind of just upkeep these structures. So these would be dotted along these major arterial highways. And that is where you would be staying at. If there wasn't Super 8, there wasn't Comfort Inn, okay, you would find a monastery and they would actually allow you in as long as you were like a follower of Jesus. So I guess you could just like lie at the time if you weren't one. And they would let you stay there for basically about a week. How they would get people out, because they couldn't kick you out, right? Like, they couldn't just kick out followers of Christianity. They would essentially give you a ration of bread and water and I guess grog at the time, which was just like alcohol, but 10%, like 90% water. So it didn't go stale. And they would, over a period of a week, they would decrease your ration to basically gently nudge you out of the monastery and so keep you on your travels. So you can just stay there forever for free. There was also inns, like you could imagine kind of like a fantasy sort of inn deal with like a whole barkeep and a bunch of round tables where you go get drunk at with mead. There was kind of something similar to that in these villages dotted along these arterial highways, but it wasn't so comfortable where they would just have like a room for you to rent for the night. You basically rented like a corner of the room or like a small section of the inn where you would be able to like sleep without having people like rob you or anything like that. But you're like surrounded by like 50 plus other people who are also doing the same thing. So you can imagine it was very uncomfortable at the time. Like you'd probably much rather be at home. The point I'm trying to bring up here is that while travel did exist at a time and for the wealthy, it kind of existed. But for the common man, it was if you had to travel, there's a good chance you die during it. Like imagine you were to die. I mean, you were to get sick or something of like the cold on one of these roads in one of these villages or one of these inns or one of these monasteries. You would just be really screwed basically because there's no like real hospitals or anything. There's a good chance you just encounter some foreign disease you never had before and then you die from it because you're not vaccinated and your immune system is basically zero against it. It was very dangerous, from banditry to diseases to just finding lodgings. It was hard. It was hard, man. It was not a good time. However, towards the end of the Middle Ages, we're talking about the Renaissance time. So after the Black Plague basically came in and eradicated the population and gave way to a lot of like social and technological advancements. We're not going to go into that. Around the Renaissance time, there was true leisure travel. Like, and I would consider that real tourism. It was strictly only for the wealthy because the common man still basically had to like man their shops, man their crafts, man their farms. But for wealthy and nobles, you could legitimately go on a sort of big journey to different cities and countries for whatever reason. In the Renaissance, there was something called the Grand Tour, which is what they sent out their like young men and women to go on, which was basically just a big travel agency, basically stuck in tradition, where you'd go and travel like the main cities of the time, like Florence, Italy, or Venice, or Charlemagne, in France. And you go out there, you would, okay, so the word is that it's for like, so you develop as a person and culture, all the reasons why people go on trannies now. But they would basically just get drunk and go to brothels and just kind of have a good time. Like, you can imagine being rich at the time. I mean, you would just kind of just have a party, do leisure stuff. I mean, these people were still human, right? They still want to have a good time. I'm already way past my time limit, so let's continue on. Take from this is that leisure travel did exist. It was for the rich and wealthy, and it was basically like in a set pattern. It was not very free form, and it was usually for like cultural reasons to like, I guess, educate these people to become like better senators or better like businessmen. Anyway, flash forward to the Industrial Revolution. So we're talking about the late 1700s, early 1800s. And this was in Victoria, England. The Industrial Revolution gave way to the advancements of like steam engines, steam vehicles in general, like steamboats, specifically trains like this. That's important. And this basically allowed for travel. Like this gave way for transportation to become wildly available in a way that has never been before in human history. Okay, we're talking about first for everyone here. That you could go on a train and like 10 hours later, you could go to a city or something like 300 miles away. And that is something that would be like before railroads existed, was like a month or 2 month journey that was extremely treacherous and hard, as opposed to just like getting drunk and just like being in a carriage for like 10 hours and you're there. Okay, like railroads and the industrial revolution completely changed travel as humans known it since human history began. Okay, like these technological advancements in vehicles allow for you to just get on a train and go somewhere. These also interconnected cities a bunch too, like in a way that social media and like smartphones have kind of made culture available to everyone, and everyone kind of has like the same culture. At this time, railroads and like steamboats and better roads and stuff allowed for culture to be exchanged more easily throughout cities, and you started to see more of like a uniform sort of culture existing like throughout Britain and throughout Europe and stuff. Anyway, go to this next slide. Thomas Cook. He was the father of modern tourism as we know it. In America, there was railroads and stuff, of course, but the idea of going on a journey for like fun and leisure and not for like any real reason was kind of foreign. But Thomas Cook was the father of modern tourism in that he created the first travel agency. So basically like a company that would collect information on tourist traps and available transportation to go on. And they would like basically do like whole groups of people that would come in at once, and they would work through this travel agency, and they'll have this whole trip planned out for them that they would go on in America on the railroads at the time. Think about like the 1850s, 1800s, and that was a pretty big deal. Like a travel agency as a company, it was kind of the birth of the tourism industry in general. Oh, let's focus for a second. Yeah. And what's really interesting about Thomas Cook is that he is still a name that is known today. Thomas Cook, right there, you can see, is a real travel agency that you can look on Google right now, and you'll find plenty of results for travel. And that name existed all the way back in the 1800s. And it's really cool to see how like the father of modern tourism is still known today to a lot of people. You want to go on like vacations or whatever in the modern day. Now, let us rush forth. Okay. Now, if you thought railroads were cool, Henry Ford created the Model T automobile. which is what you see today. And it is pretty crazy to see these prices in dollars, like $290, right? For one vehicle. Can you imagine that today? Like buying a Honda Civic or something for $300. Of course, back then it was probably around like $10,000, $20,000 in like modern money. Still very, very affordable, right? For the time being. Like we're talking about like coal miners who only was able to like use the commercial part of travel and trains to get anywhere. But now you could just actually afford an automobile that is widely produced and has like plenty of replaceable parts just to go anywhere you want. Like as long as there is some kind of road, you could just travel in your car. You just get in and you can just go. Of course, they probably had like a max of 40 miles per hour. So not that far, but for the time being, going 40 miles per hour was extremely fast for this time. Like within 3 days or so, you could travel hundreds of miles in a week on one of these things. You go see your grandparents. You like actually go see like your leaders, right? In American government, a lot of people would go to like Washington D.C. to go talk to the president at the time, or like different kind of leaders because they all lived around the White House, and that was something you could do. But anyway, it really made travel accessible, and it was kind of the groundwork for the next part of the slide. Everyone's seen one of these, these like Volkswagens, these like Land Raiders, like one of these cars from like the 1960s. Now, what these cars represent is not just like the technological progress to create this vehicle, but also the social progress that America underwent as a concept. Like look what they're on. They're on a highway, right? Back then, it was still just like dirt roads or like stone roads or whatever. But a highway specifically meant for vehicles, that was alien to everyone else on the planet at this time. That was so crazy. And you can see right there, they're just hanging out with their family, just in their car, and they're just going probably to the Grand Canyon or something. So they're traveling like an entire country. And America is very large, y'all. Like a very huge landmass compared to like European places. And they would go very far just for tourism, just for leisure, just because they can, just on a middle class income. They could just get in the car that they could afford on their like factory salary, and they could go see the world. Like that is travel tourism. That is vacations. And more than that, while the car also represents technological progress, the highway represents social progress. Businesses at this time, like really, America really underwent a big change in class. Like, the middle class developed, and not everyone was just separated into like ultra rich and ultra poor. And this allowed the development of entirely new industries called like the travel industry. So think about like actual hotels and inns like Super 8 at this time. They would develop, and you could go to one and rent a room and have a pretty comfortable time. Or you could go to McDonald's and just in your car and just buy a sandwich instead of like having to just pack like rations of hardtack or any kind of like preservable food. And you just kind of needed money. You just needed money, the road, and a car, and you can go anywhere in America. And people had money at this time, so they kind of just went and did that. That's what you should take from this slide. Wow, 24 minutes. I am so sorry. Okay, last slide, I promise. Now, flash forward 50 more years to like 2010, right? Modern tourism as we know it has completely shifted to like be as accessible as it has ever been in human history as it is right now. You don't need to even call the place. You can just go to sites like booking.com or Expedia, and you could just months in advance just book a room somewhere, even in a different country, and have a place to stay at that specific time period, as long as you're there. Just all from a click on the internet. You didn't need to like just show up and have to like scroll around. Like it's become like very accessible, especially with the smartphone. I mean, think about a smartphone for a second. If someone doesn't understand your language, right, or you don't understand theirs, and you're in a foreign country, you just pull up Google Translate, and bam, there you go. You can kind of speak their language. You can kind of understand each other. It's a lot better than nothing. So you can even go to places that have language barriers and kind of get around and buy services and goods and go wherever you want, whenever you want. I mean, it's gotten so accessible that think about how you see on Instagram or Facebook people just posting pictures of all the places they go to, or how they just travel to like Montana or freaking Spain or something like that. They can just do that whenever they want. Easy. Now, the money signs here represent the travel industry as a concept and how it has evolved so much that for places like Jamaica or like the Caribbeans, Hawaii, places like that, that is over 20% of their GDP. So not from any kind of like economic interactions that's outside of providing for tourism. That's almost a quarter of all money that that entire country makes and produces for the world. It's just based on tourism. Now, remember, 500 years ago, tourism as a concept hasn't existed, right? It wasn't even an industry. It was just something that happened sometimes. But now, like, entire countries are basing their future planning off of a tourists and stuff coming to their entire nation. Now that is pretty incredible for such a short period of time. Now finally, I cannot make this 30 minutes long. Oh gosh. Okay. All in all, modern tourism is generations of progress. That is what it represents. You're talking about it was only available for the wealthy and the extremely privileged to even just go see a different country like 300 miles away. And now you could still be poor, and as long as you have like $500, you can go on Delta Airlines or like some kind of budget airline, and you could just travel hundreds and hundreds and thousands of miles just in a day with commercial airlines or just even trains and stuff. Just all on like even a poor salary wherever you want, which just didn't exist as even a concept or an idea. Like the modern traveler is should be very grateful of all the technological progress that even existed for them to do that. So all in all, the history of tourism is the history of almost humanity and the availability of trains, of travel, of transportation, of even just I guess general resources like money, right? And well, that's basically all I got. It has ran way too long. I am so sorry if anybody's listening. It's the first time I've ever done this. I kind of went off on spiels. I like history. I think it's really fascinating to see how older people lived as opposed to us. And it makes you kind of grateful for what like you have now. So I'm just gonna wrap it up. Uh, Also, thank you for the class. Thank you for being in the class together. It has been a trip, and I wish everyone had like a good July, a good future life, and everything like that. And goodbye.